Do you ever notice how some leaders think they're great communicators because they send, long dissertations, emails that oftentimes nobody reads? Yeah, guilty as charged. Leadership isn't about talking more. It's about listening better. And when you combine dialogue with what Wallace D. Wattles calls acting in the certain way, which is with gratitude and integrity and faith and positivity and optimism and confidence, you get a legacy that sticks. And that's what we are after here, right? Wattles, in the Science of Getting Rich book that he wrote, he wasn't talking about greed either in the sense of rich. He was talking about creativity and innovation and faith that makes our lives richer. He said that act in the certain way so that your faith is demonstrated in and by your actions. For leaders, that means showing up with steady, optimistic confidence, even when things aren't perfect, because everything is always figure outable. Yes? Your people don't need to have a magic wand, but they do need to have faith that together, we will figure it out. So we never have to say, there's not enough, or we can't do that. We don't practice that lack mentality. So here's the multiplier for that towards abundance. It's dialogue. Stephen Covey nails it when he says that most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Even one of our mates shared that this week as one of her challenges with people. Legacy leaders will flip that script. They ask, they pause, and they let silence breathe. And John Maxwell, famous motivator, reminds us that people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. The fastest way for people to buy into you as a leader? Show them that you care enough to hear their voice. I've seen this firsthand. Once during a tight season several years ago, we had asked a teammate what would make their day easier. They didn't ask for a raise or a new title or an F-150 in the parking lot. They said, if I just knew a little earlier in the week what jobs were going where, I could plan better and hopefully do more. Guess what? That tiny piece of dialogue turned into an upgrade on our system with some SOPs to change that would make everyone's life easier, including and especially this young man's. One small question, one honest answer, and suddenly stress went down and trust went up. Now, let's be honest. Again, dialogue isn't always elegant. Sometimes it's more like bad karaoke, off key, awkward, and occasionally painful. But you know what? Awkward truth still beats polished silence. Because when there's no communication, even if it's long dissertations in an email, people will fill in the blanks. And in their version of the story, most often, you're usually the villain. And trust me, you don't want to star in that movie, right? And as George Bernard Shaw quips, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Just because you said something or sent an email out doesn't mean it was heard and received and understood. Sometimes it requires multiple communiques. Peter Drucker says that the most important thing in communication is hearing what is not said. Leaders need to tune into those pauses, the hesitations, and sometimes the unsent emails or unsaid words. Zig Ziglar says you don't build a business, you build people, and the people build the business. Dialogue is what builds people. Gary V, you don't want to talk to your people. You don't know your people. And if you don't know your people, you don't have a team. You have a payroll. And payrolls don't build legacies. People do. So here's our challenge this week. As ask one teammate, if I could have a magic wand and fix one thing for you, what would it be? Really, you don't need the wand. You just need the ears now. And maybe a little hustle behind what you do here. And try and pick one doable thing and then act on it with gratitude and confidence. That's dialogue in the certain way. You see, legacy leaders don't hoard certainty. They co-create it. They don't just talk, they listen, they laugh, they learn, and they act with faith. So as you keep building your legacy, remember Wattles, Covey, Maxwell, Drucker, and so on, all pointing to the same truth. Communication isn't noise. Dialogue is the multiplier. And when you act in a certain way, with gratitude and courage, you don't just lead for today, you build a legacy for tomorrow. Because in the end, the real legacy is you. Cheers.